Reminder. Maybe I don't know.
Here we go. Here's the link.
I've been searching for kindred soul, someone to help me down this lonely road. When I looked too hard, I forgot what I was looking for. And when I found you there, I decided I would head out for the storm. You are lightning, you are thunder, you're the rain I'm standing under. There's nothing I can do but to be struck down by you. You are lightning, you are thunder, you're the rain I'm standing under. There's nothing I can do but to be struck down by you. I can feel you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
They call us deplorable, and we love the name. They got the bodies in the dirt and need someone to blame. Got a penchant for greed and money to spare. They put the dollars in the coffers and the lies in the air. Well, we go one, we go all. I won't push you down, you won't let me fall. One day for sure we will stand tall. Where we go one, we go all. We are the patriots, trust the plan because we have it all and the fate is in our hands. Had a reason to fool us, but we didn't take the bait. They want to take us to hell, but we got guns at the gate. Where we go one, we go all. I won't push you down, you won't let me fall. One day for sure we will stand tall. Where we go one, we go all. They call it a conspiracy, it's the one last lie. We know who they are, and we got them in our sights. Our knowledge is power, they're running for the hills. If the law don't get them, then we the people will. Well, we go one, we go all. I won't push you down, you won't let me fall. One day for sure we will stand tall. Where we go one, we go all. We go all. I won't push you down, you won't let me fall. One day for sure we will stand tall. Where we go one, We go on.
That was a great intro.
Hello, everybody. I want to welcome everybody here to Band of Brothers. I am 101st Airborne, and we're going to lead off with Murph. He's got an article for us, so go ahead and give it to us.
I was on the internet today, and I was reading from CNN. Journalists face unprecedented hostility this year. Can you imagine? More journalists were killed, abused, and subjected to violence in 2018 than in any other year on record. Those in the profession facing an unprecedented level of hostility. A new report has murder, imprisonment, hostage-taking, and enforced disappearance of journalists all increased compared to last year, according to Reporters Without Borders, RSF, who criticized politicians and public figures for encouraging disdain for the news media. Gee, I wonder where this is heading to. A total of 80 journalists were killed, including non-professional journalists and media workers. 61% were murdered or deliberately targeted for their reporting, while 39% were killed while reporting. The report also found that 348 reporters were being detained and 60 were being held hostage. The findings further highlighted the volatility faced by journalists across the world over the past 12 months, a period which has seen high-profile murders, imprisonment, as well as verbal attacks on the news media by key global figures, including U.S. President Donald Trump. This is what kind of got me a little bit going there, is that they just had to add that in there. And then the article shows, basically a graphic of kind of splitting it out: 348 detained, 60 held hostage, 3 missing, 80 killed. Violence against journalists has reached unprecedented levels this year, and the situation is now critical. RSF Secretary General Christophe Delory said in a news release accompanying the report, the hatred of journalists that is voiced and sometimes very openly proclaimed by unscrupulous politicians, religious leaders, and businessmen has tragic consequences on the ground and has been reflected in its disturbing increase in violation against journalists, he added. Shocking murder of Washington Post columnist Jamal Khashoggi in October, which led to an international outcry, demonstrated the appalling nature of the Saudi regime and Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman's oppressive methods. The organization said Saudi Arabia's Ministry of Foreign Affairs has previously said that Khashoggi's murder does not reflect the kingdom's policy nor its institutions. The RSF report added that the high-profile killing of Slovakian journalist Jan Kuciak and the arrest of Reuters journalists Ka So-u and Hua Lon in Myanmar demonstrated how far some people will go to silence troublesome journalists. Last couple of paragraphs here. For the first time, the U.S. joined the list of deadliest countries for journalists in the annual report, with 6 reporters killed in 2018. 4 journalists were murdered in a shooting at the Capital Gazette newspaper in Annapolis, Maryland in June, while 2 journalists were killed in May while covering hazardous weather in North Carolina. Afghanistan was the deadliest country, with 15 reporters killed, 10 of whom died in series of attacks in Kabul in April, for which ISIS claimed responsibility. That pretty much ends that article. But what I found interesting was that they had to tie in Donald Trump because he will fight back with what his truth is versus their made up things. And also, how did the 2 journalists how they made the list for people reporters getting murdered by a weather incident? How did that make the list? So see, my point of reading the whole article was you have to look at the statistics that they're putting into these articles, and they just pull random things into it. So be careful out there when you're reading this stuff. It's kind of odd. Or fake news in a way. Bits and pieces. Anyway, anybody have any comments?
Yeah, it wasn't just a couple of weeks ago, or before the Bush funeral, that Mike Pompeo Ray gave a briefing to Congress stating that there was zero evidence that Prince Salman knowledge or anything to do with Khashoggi's murder. And the director of the CIA, I can't remember what her name is offhand, but she refused to even come that day and give anything because they don't have any evidence that it was Prince Salman or even the Saudi government that had anything to do with Khashoggi's murder. And so when our Congress acts to blame Prince Salman, what they want is they want him removed because he's a good guy. He's not a bad guy. And who are we to point fingers at another government executing their own citizens, if that is the case? And now, mind you, the ambassador in Turkey for Saudi Arabia doesn't like Prince Salman. That's convenient. He likes Prince Alawid bin Talal, who was the heir apparent until he was removed by his uncle for his massive corruption. So I think it's really funny that his good friend, the ambassador in Turkey, it all happened there. Khashoggi was Prince Alawid's good friend. That's very convenient, So he goes to a friendly ambassador of Prince Alawid's and a hostile ambassador to Prince Salman. You just can't make this stuff up. Why would he go there?
Yeah, I think my opinion on that is the if you want to call it deep state bad actors or whatever, they're trying to drive a wedge between the U.S. and Saudi Arabia because they want to get back on their let's help out Iran for whatever reason and get them to where they're power in the Middle East more so than what they are now.
Well, I'm just saying that accusing Prince Salman with zero evidence against because he is the heir. His father, Prince Salman's father, is what you would call the king regent. He's not the crown king, but he's the regent. When they found out about all the corruption and the theft of the money from the Saudi royal holding company that Prince Alawid was doing, they had him and 13,000 other people arrested. He was rounded up. He was the leader of the gang. So I wouldn't take, and they want the United States, when they made their little proclamation, they want Prince Alawid reinstated as the heir apparent. What does that tell you? We have no evidence, and based on you're guilty based on evidence, and our own government agencies are saying there is no evidence. It's just hyperbole, accusations,
exactly.
Fake news.
Yeah, just like the addition of the two reporters that got killed in weather events down in South Carolina. So how does that make the U.S. anymore make this list that they're saying of all these reporters meeting violence and threats and everything else? It's nonsense the way they write these.
I agree.
Anyway, if there's no more other questions, comments, turn it back over to Hunter.
Well, why would they bring these statistics out? I mean, what is the purpose of it? I mean, the Khashoggi, he's tied in with Osama bin Laden, and isn't he? I mean, I've heard stories. I was just looking for the article that I read that bin Laden's still alive and he's been in Iran, and Khashoggi's been looking or been hanging with him. Have you ever heard stories like that?
I've heard a slight rumor that he's somewhere, but I never knew that he was with, or Khashoggi was with him necessarily. I know he has ties to him, or had ties to him, if you believe this, that he was taken out.
Well, when you're at that high level, there's more than what the eye's showing us there. So, I was just kind of curious about that. But yeah. So anybody else got anything on this? All right, then I guess we'll slide on into the. Oh, okay.
Yes.
Pull it up. That's a great idea.
Well, see, the other thing about that article is they are in everybody's business, and they're trying to manipulate the public's opinion about what's going on instead of just writing about what actually is going on. And they're putting their own opinion in there, and it's just the, what do you call it? The journalist, say Jim Acosta. Everybody watched that video where he put his hand on that girl with a mic, and you saw the next day on CNN, oh, he never touched her. It's like, well, let's see the whole video. There it is. I mean, it's amazing to me what they try to get away with.
Tenacity, are you thinking about the answer to the what is the wizards and warlocks?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct. I think that's what I remember, is that who was the answer, but it was just recently, right? And it said the Guardians. And again, that would align to the whole mainstream media theory, right? That they all control the narrative and they control the story. It's just like the people who win the war get to write the history. Same kind of thing,
Exactly. Except for they're not winning anything. There's nothing to be won. All they're doing is making a deadline for an article. I guess it's just odd that these people can't write correctly, and they're supposed to be journalists.
Well, you're not supposed to. They're hoping that the majority use any critical thinking skills and say evidence. You say something, say it doesn't make it true. Whereas they said all these government agencies, and then Mike Pompeo and Christopher Wray step out and they testify. It doesn't exist. And the CIA, where the news media claimed that the CIA had evidence, they don't even bother to show up because the truth is there is no evidence that it has anything to do with the current royal government of Saudi Arabia. It has nothing to do with them. It is all outside. It is all these corrupt actors that they rounded up and arrested. Basically, they held them for a period of time, and the most they got were fines because they're all princes and etc. Maybe a few low-level people who are not considered royal members, maybe they got punished and are sitting in prison, anguishing in the Saudi prison someplace, but nobody important. Prince Alawid had all of his money taken except for $6 billion. Wow, he's a poor guy. And, we all know that how much funding he did of terrorism around the world. States. In fact, if you want to point to things, um, Prince Alawid bin Talal's #1 security guy was at the Boston bombing. There's photographs of him.
Okay, so I'm looking at this post here, and it says guardian of the Pope, and it also is highlighted guardian of intelligence. So what would that be?
NSA, CIA, DIA.
And the mainstream media. Well, they're not
Yeah,
the
but
intelligence, but they are the mockingbird, right?
by guardian, I guess guardian could mean plural, couldn't it? Guardian.
Or the eye, all-seeing eye, and the owl.
I thought it was worth mentioning. We can go to the next topic. Just was one of those, and
Good
it's on
eye.
CNN, right? So it's just, breadcrumbs.
Yep.
And they target themselves, right? This is why I bring it up, because they like to make the scenario where they're the victim, right? They always are playing the victim, all poor them, right? CNN, they had a bomb scare. Oh, poor, Joe, Mr. Acosta, Oh, I'm sorry, I'm being mean. But, so
Yeah,
what
look
they
how
do
hazardous our. Sorry.
No,
No,
go
I was
on.
talking long anyway. I was just going to say, they make themselves out to be victims, so they get the empathy, right? And it looks like they're not the bad guys, because bad guys are hurting them too, right?
Exactly, and it's just so fake. Not fake, but it's I don't know, self-serving in a way. Oh look, we've been targeted, and then they throw Trump in there, because they don't get along with. And the whole article was about violence and death and jailed journalists being jailed, and nobody has been killed here except for those 4, not the 6. And nobody's persecuting them, put them in the jail. Not like Obama wouldn't, what do you call it, wiretapping some reporters' email and phone calls and everything else because he didn't like them. They never said anything about that guy. Anyway, 101st, it's up to you.
Up to me, is it? I don't know. Why is it up to me?
No, actually,
You're
Freedom was
the
going to share
MC.
with us some info. Oh, sorry, I was
Excuse
just
me?
going to say Freedom was going to share some Christmas. Oh no, Space Command, I believe, if I got that right.
Space Command.
Yes. Tuesday, President Donald Trump signed a memorandum directing the Defense Department to reinstate the United States Space Command. But that title is a little deceptive. Ronald Reagan's administration in 1982, they created, and it was, or AKA, the Air Force Space Command, the United States Space Command, or the U.S. Air Force Space Command, and it was stationed at Peterson Air Force Base in Colorado Springs, Colorado. And in 2002, Donald Rumsfeld, who was the Secretary of Defense at the time, moved the U.S. Space Command and merged it with U.S. Strategic Command. And before John McCain passed away, the John S. Sidney McCain National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2019 authorized the creation of the U.S. Space Command. So it's already been authorized by the House and the Senate, even though they want to pretend. But this is the article that I had found. It's with newsy.com, and I'll read.
May I play the video?
Must have ear fog.
The Trump administration is making moves it hopes will lead to creating a future U.S. Space Force. On Tuesday, President Donald Trump signed a memorandum establishing a new U.S. Space Command under the Defense Department. During remarks at the Kennedy Space Center, Vice President Mike Pence announced the reinstatement of the command, which was created decades ago, but assimilated into Strategic Command in 2002.
Hold up on the video. She's going to read.
I thought that was the point. Okay. December the 18th, 2018, with Newsy, Mutualer, President Donald Trump signed a memorandum Tuesday directing the Defense Department to reinstate the United States Space Command. The Trump administration is making moves it hopes will lead to the creation of the future United States Space Force. She obviously hasn't done her homework because all those things have already been implemented. On Tuesday, President Trump signed a memorandum to establish the new United States Space Command under the Department of Defense. During remarks at the Kennedy Space Center, Vice President Mike Pence announced the reinstatement of the command, which was created decades ago by assimilating into the Strategic Command in 2002. The has said it aims to make U.S. Space Force a reality by 2020, which that would be a reality under the Defense Authorization Act. That would be an entirely new military service dedicated to defense in outer space. Easy. Creating the sixth branch of the United States Armed Services would require congressional approval, which has already been done. Democrats have already expressed skepticism about the initiative. Have pointed to the cost as a possible hurdle. A report obtained by the media outlets this year established that the Space Force would cost $13 billion over 5 years, but subsequent reports have brought that price. Pence also said that Trump will sign a new space policy directive in the coming days, and it is expected to give more details about the administration's plan and the timeline for a branch of the armed forces. You can, there are other articles, but article, and I'm going to drop it, but I'm not going to read it, by The Verge.
The Trump administration is
many of the same issues, but if you it's the U.S. Space Command under Section 161 and under U.S. Code authorizes the creation of it already. Somebody, reporter reported on it, but didn't understand just because somebody says something to her, work in her history. Have it created in 1985, but it was actually created in 1982. I just thought it was interesting because they're going, all these, it used to be all of the space stuff, communication, navigation, that was in space that we were putting up in space, were all under one command, and then dispersed it out and against throughout all the different branches. What Trump wants to do is bring them all back under one umbrella again, for a better continuity.
And what umbrella would that be?
United States Space Command. That's the umbrella it would be. You'd have an Air Force, an Army, a Navy, a Marine Corps, a U.S. Coast Guard, and command branch.
Right. So what are we expecting out of this? I mean, are we expecting spaceship fighters? Is that what we're looking at, or what are we? See, that's what I'm trying to grab onto, because all I know of as far as aircraft are, airplanes, the space thing going up into the atmosphere, things like that. So
I was just
Space Force, Space Command. That you see where I'm at.
Well, let me answer. The problem is that our arch nemesis, Russia and China, are venturing more into outer space, advancing with technologies that they have stolen from us, or maybe a certain party has given that to them, Clintons, and they are so far advanced that we need to make sure that our communication systems are being able to launch our missiles. It used to be that they controlled all of our nuclear defense systems because they were also under energy. So what they would, all these things, that the communication, the guided rockets, everything that has anything to do with space, communication, Strategic Air Command, all that would be under United States Space Command, which is originally how it was, and it was that way until 2002.
Hunter, first, what I understand, I mean, as far as a Space Force, it would be your, like the radar stations on the ground, plus with satellite, coordinated with satellites, probably retasking of satellites, and probably methods to bring down enemy satellites that are put up for defensive aggressive or defensive purposes. So you can think about those kind of methods, because China and Russia have already demonstrated they can knock down satellites from the ground. So I'm not sure if it's necessarily spacecraft, but it could be maybe space vehicles that they put up to be able to either bring them down or disable or even eavesdrop.
Or it could be even laser technology that China is putting up, and their lasers taking out our satellites, or we have laser technology that we put up, satellites, etc. But
exactly.
TN Wirehead said it will cut out a lot of black projects and more answerable to Congress. 51 question mark. Yeah, yep. I would agree.
Yeah, that's true. It'll be put in front and center where everybody can see it. Sometimes I often wonder, I'm a big defense nut, looking at all the airplanes and helicopters and aircraft carriers, ships, all that kind of stuff. You can go to Real Clear Defense and see all that stuff in articles they put up. And I'm most pretty much thinking right now that why do we tell them so much?
Well, that's really all I have to, say about the. Oh, if you want to play the video, I don't think it's really necessary. It doesn't really do it. I just put the link to the video to the article in YouTube and let people play it themselves.
Trump administration is making moves it hopes will lead to creating a future U.S. Space Force. On Tuesday, President Donald Trump signed a memorandum establishing a new U.S. Space Command under the Defense Department. During remarks at the Kennedy Space Center, Vice President Mike Pence announced the reinstatement of the command, which was created decades ago but assimilated into Strategic Command in 2002. The administration has said it aims to make a U.S. Space Force a reality by 2020. That would be an entirely new military service dedicated to defense and outer space.
Anyone
it may
else?
not be easy. Creating a sixth branch of the U.S. Armed Services would require congressional approval, and Democrats have already expressed skepticism about the initiative. Some lawmakers have pointed to the costs as a possible hurdle. A report obtained by media outlets earlier this year estimated that a Space Force could cost close to $13 billion over 5 years, but subsequent reports have brought that price down a bit. Pence also said that Trump will sign a new space policy directive in the coming days. It's expected to give more details about the administration's plan and a timeline for the new branch of the armed forces.
That people can go and read about it, about the history of it from conception, early 80s.
It just brings back images of George Jetson in his flying car to me. But anyway.
Well, I mean, people are criticizing it now, but when Ronald Reagan was talking about it, they were thinking, "Oh, how advanced."
Yeah, I know.
How far were thinking that he was thinking about that? Already in the works before he ever became president. That was like cooked up back in Eisenhower and advanced under Nixon, and then advanced more by Kennedy, and then Johnson, and
Yep, that's where NORAD got established in 1961, I believe.
NORAD there in Colorado Springs. You can go see the mountain paperwork, and the next day you can go inside the mountain and take a tour.
Really? I did not know that.
Yes, you can, but you have to, they fingerprint you, they take your photo, and they take a copy of your driver's license, paperwork. They do a background check on you, make sure you're not a Russian spy, and then back the next day, and or 2 days later. I can't remember. I think it depends on every personnel station. They're a little bit different than walking on, but you can go to Mount Iron Mountain, the home of the Strategic Air Command, home of NORAD, and it looks like, remember that thing that had the Stargate, and they always use that Stargate inside it. If any fans of Stargate but there isn't one. But you leave all your phones and any electronic equipment in a little basket and electronic stuff, and they wand you up and down, and then they walk you around and get to go. To know you're inside of a
Video still playing, Tennessee? Okay, next up on the
funny enough, while I change the scenery here, it's supposed to actually 101st had suggested we talk about Christmas memories. So, but I think he prepared something. So one thing I was wondering, I really didn't get to see any news today. So does anybody see anything cool that you saw in the news today? Just for a minute while we're waiting for 101st. If not, we'll just we're not gonna leave dead air or anything, unless somebody brought something.
Oh, I didn't bring anything.
just the article that I read.
Yeah, sorry, Murph, I didn't see your IM just now.
That's right.
Okay. Is 101st back by chance?
Well, I see on the White House site that I shared, this 1600 Daily. Just they have a quick news blog of what happened today. And I'll just read it to you quickly. I dropped you the link already. As the 2018 closes, 6 big priorities at the White House. From day one, President Donald J. Trump pledged not to rest until he delivered on his promise to fix Washington. That commitment doesn't take a break for the holidays. From border security and school safety to renovating America's space program, here's an inside look at the 6 big priorities the administration is working on this week. Securing our border. Today, the press secretary, Sarah Sanders, reiterated message to President Trump delivered to the Democratic leaders last week. He will not back down until he can make sure that the American citizens are protected. And then there's a news clip on Fox, a link to that. Building the Space Force. President Trump took a crucial step towards creation of the Space Force by directing the Department of Defense to establish a combat command, which will oversee the U.S. military activities in space. And then Vice President Mike Pence had a full speech at Kennedy Space Center. And then keeping our kids safe. After the tragic shooting in Parkland, Florida, President Trump established the School Safety Commission to make recommendations on how to prevent violence in our schools. Today, the commission released its final 180-page report, and then there's a link to that as well. Banning bump stocks. Earlier this year, the president instructed the Department of Justice to review a rule that would ban all devices that turn legal weapons into machine guns. Acting Attorney General Matthew Whitaker has signed the final rule, and there's a link to that. Reforming our prisons, historic bipartisan criminal justice reform is moving closer to President Trump's desk. Our whole nation benefits. Its former inmates are able to re-enter society as productive, law-abiding citizens. The president says why he supports the First Step Act, and there's a link to that as well. And then delivering for the American farmers this week, President Trump plans to sign another important piece of bipartisan legislation, the 2018 Farm Bill, which strengthens American agriculture. Our economy is stronger than ever. We stand by our farmers, the president tweeted this week. And then he has some photos of Melania and him in the White House with all the Christmas trees and whatnot. But that kind of sums up what happened today. So I just thought I'd throw that in. Next.
Well, I just found something However, kind of waiting, but headline on Google News right now: CNN's Chris Cuomo spots uncanny similarity of Trump and Russian bot messages. This is from the Huffington Post. It's just amazing to me. If I get a meme off the internet somewhere, do I really check out where it's coming from? And if it sounds good, you generally pass it along, right? These things get passed along everywhere, and all of a sudden, all of a sudden there's something suspicious there. Just amazing. Chris Cuomo couldn't spot his own house.
Well, we could start I have a little Christmas story. It's not very long, but then maybe Mark could tell his if he has one.
I don't have one.
You don't have one. You have kids. You got to have one. Okay. Well, every kid, Santa's here, and they for some reason that's the one day they wake up early. And I have one kid that you'd wake him up and Santa's been here. Okay. And he'd go back to sleep. You don't want to see what Santa brought you? Come on. No, it'll be there when I get up. So the youngest, he would get, he was always a go-getter from the very first Christmas I think he ever saw. And I think it was his second Christmas or maybe his third. And he went behind the tree, and I was like, because it wasn't quite behind the tree. And I thought he was just playing over there, looking at the lights and everything. And so I put him to bed that evening, and everything was fine. And I woke up the next morning, and every gift under the tree had been unwrapped.
That's too funny.
And he's the one that, you can't beat out of bed. He's up before you. He would always check my closet. And he knew that he knew I was Santa from 4 years old on. He knew that I was a liar. I kept on telling him, what are you talking about? Oh no, those are gifts I'm giving to shelters and things for kids who, don't have homes at Christmas and aren't going to get gifts. But of course, he goes, no, because I always get the same thing that's in the closet, Mom. That's like, you can't even lie to a 4-year-old without getting schooled. It's like, you're a liar because I checked your closet.
Should change his presents out to a bunch of coal.
Well, they always got.
Didn't see that one coming, did you?
Tins of coal every year in their stockings, and money, and just every little junk little dollar game, and like a travel Yahtzee, or whatever, magnetic tic-tac-toe game that they can carry in the car, because being military, we were always sort of finding the cheapest way to go do things as a family. But he was a little stinker. Yeah, I couldn't get anything past that child. And he unwrapped every gift, and I had to drag all the gifts into the bedroom, close the door so the other one at least could be surprised. But it didn't matter. He probably told his brother everything he.
100 verse.
I don't think he's coming back. The funny thing, so I was about 11, and my parents had to go into, I'm trying to think what year, that's why I'm stalling, because it's like in the 80s sometime, and early 80s, and there was this huge, you guys might know, it was this huge like historic snowstorm in Denver, and it closed Christmas Eve, right? And Christmas Day, everybody was like snowed in. Literally 7 feet of snow up in Conifer and Evergreen. I mean, so I'm not making this up. So my parents left me. My father and my stepmother left me in their house to watch my brother and my half sister, and she was like 2 and he was like 7 or 8. And they didn't expect to have this huge snowstorm. So they leave, go to Denver, a snowstorm, stuck there. That was the day before Christmas Eve. Christmas Eve, still can't get back. Okay, I've been in this house on the top of the mountain, 7 feet of snow. Still, Christmas comes, that's when I find out Santa's not coming, and I have to play Santa. Yeah, it was quite interesting. I was never so happy to see my parents in my life. I did not care there was no Santa. Because it was 3 days up there. I was like, okay, that's fine. But that's a heck of a way to find out, right? It's kind of funny. The funny part about it is my brother decided he was a very crazy kid, right? There was an adult up there, just so you know. My aunt was somewhere. I don't know. She didn't like kids, so she hid the entire time. But just in case, like, we died, she'd be there. You know, that kind of thing. So we were okay, you know. But, you know, I was the adult of the house for the most part. Well, he goes outside and doesn't realize that 7 feet of snow, what that means. We're from Florida. So he jumps off the second story and jumps out to sled. Jumps off the sled, and all we did is we saw the sled and we saw a hat. And, you know, Florida girl here wasn't real sure what to do about that, right? So luckily the neighbor did, and, you know, dug him out. Took about 5 hours, actually. So, but yeah, that's, if you guys ever ask me about snow, I'm like, yeah, no. For that Christmas story right there.
I have a slight story. What we used to do with the kids when they were younger. We get them off to bed, and once about a half hour later, you know, we'd have them set out cookies. Before they went to bed, we'd set out cookies and milk for Santa Claus, and then we'd also put carrots out on the patio for the reindeer, you know, so they'd have something to eat too. So about an hour or two after they'd go to bed, I'd eat half the cookies, drink the milk, and not necessarily that order, and then put bite marks in the carrots that we put outside, so it made it look like their reindeer actually did come and visit with Santa. But yeah, that was our thing up till they were about, I want to say 13, 14 years old.
You just wanted an excuse for cookies.
I had to chomp on some carrots too, you know, put bite marks on them. You know, chunk.
That's
so cute. I had to keep that illusion going.
I learned at a very young age because of my brothers and sisters that there was no Santa. But my kids, I kept the illusion going until they were all about 13 or 14. That was a good thing. You know, I didn't have good Christmases as a kid, so I had to make sure that my kids got them. And they did. They had good Christmases.
You gave me the impression you didn't do that, but I'm glad you did, because it's good. You know, kids are kids, right? So I'm glad. I always feel wonder, you know, you don't want to give them too many lies about Christmas, but you don't want to take away all that wonder as well, right? So it's a hard balance sometimes.
Yeah.
Hey, I was going to ask you guys.
For Liberty, you got...
What'd you say for Liberty?
No, I don't have anything right now.
Okay. 100%.
So my apologies. I just got the notification and it popped up. So my apologies. For Liberty, did you have a Christmas story?
I think For Liberty is come to support us and cheer us on.
It's all by volunteers, so I just want to make sure you had an opportunity if you wanted to.
Well, there's an executive order closing all executive departments and agencies of the federal government on December 24th, issued today. So that's a good.
That's a wonderful thing.
Yeah. Did you also see? Oh, did you see the article today about the 4.8 billion going to Mexico, and that the wall is off the table right now?
No, elaborate, please. That's scary.
Yeah. I don't know what's going on there, but it was on Google News today.
We give them every year. They give aid to countries around the world. Mexico, that aid every year, just like China, but give them aid every year, and that doesn't go towards the money we owe them. But Sarah Sanders in her Sarah Huckabee, her press conference today did talk about Trump was going to pay for it in the new trade agreement that they had, and that money that is saving, instead of having to give them that money, we would be keeping it. But instead of just going, keeping it in the treasury, would go to, so we would have money for the wall. I don't know, if you look at that press conference today, that's where it's at.
Anyway, if nobody has anything, Tenacity, I don't know if you want to close it out for the night.
It kind of looks like 100.
Why don't we just play him for a minute before we turn off? Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
So it's called Thank You for the Pain.
And maybe in between 101st we'll come back. He said he was having internet problems earlier.
Rise like the tide, your song I know.
Sounds like a plan. How do you guys?
Give me the notion, won't run and hide. The saddest song I wrote. Yeah, I won't thank you. Won't thank you for the pain. Yeah, I won't thank you. Won't thank you once again. Wishing on a dead star, I could know where you really are. It's not that easy.
How does that go? Does anybody know that song?
I'm begging to the moonlight. Bring me just one more night. She still fades away.